Well, good morning. Are you ready for number 35? And it's not just number 35. Today is the final section of Isaiah. And today's going to be easy. The last few days that we've had have been, harder to understand maybe. Today, I think what we're going to find is at least it's easier reading. So the question for today is we look around ourselves today. There's a lot going on, right? A lot of creepy stuff. The world's getting pretty sketchy. We've got diseases, and maybe more than that, we've got madness associated with diseases. And what is going on? So let's take a look at what Isaiah is going to tell us about the future. He's not going to answer every single question, but I think he might help to give some perspective. So, where we've come through in the past few sessions have been some pretty intense Isaiah chapters, an awful lot about Assyria coming down and stomping all over Israel and Judah. And so today we're gonna wrap it up. So let's jump in. This is 2 Nephi 23, which is compared to Isaiah chapter 13. And we'll go 13, 14, 15. 13, 14, sorry, no 15. The burden of Babylon, which Isaiah, the son of Amoz, did see. Now you'll notice when he says the burden, that usually means a prophecy that's going to be kind of gloomy. And you could almost say the burden is on the shoulders of the prophet who is tasked with bringing this as a messenger to the people or to the king. Lift ye up a banner upon the high mountain, exalt the voice unto them, shake the hand, that they may go into the gates of the nobles. I have commanded my sanctified ones, I have also called my mighty ones, for mine anger is not upon them that rejoice in my highness. Okay, so as we read through all of what's coming on today, sorry, I should have given you a little more preface. Isaiah there's going to be kind of a lot of drifting in and out of immediate prophecy. And when I say immediate, he's going to prophesy about actually the end of Babylon. So it's been mostly Assyria up to this point. Assyria is going to come down and almost completely destroy Israel and Judah. Remember, but he's going to leave Jerusalem behind. And so this now, like 50, 60 years after that is Babylon's going to come. Well, I'm sorry, not so long after that. After Assyria, though, Babylon's going to come and completely wipe them out, destroy the temple, all that. And Isaiah doesn't talk about Babylonia's destruction of Jerusalem and the captivity of the Jews. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about the end of Babylon. So he kind of skips over that middle part here. So he's going to drift in and out of talking about pretty specifically what's going to happen with Babylon. But then it's interesting because if you think about it, what are we really reading here? What we're reading is Nephi sharing those words with his people and with us. He chose these for important reasons that some of which he describes and some of which he doesn't. And so why would he take the time to tell his people and to tell us about a city, a nation, a land, a people that we never saw and we never will see? It's like a history lesson about something that is almost irrelevant to us, right? So is that really all he was doing? Or was he sharing this with us because this applies to us? So even though a fair bit of this, well, at least some of it you'll see, seems very specific to the fall of Babylon in the ancient times, I think still we have to look at this and say, yeah, but what does this mean for me? I think there's a lesson for me in this. I think this has to do with today and my life, what's going on around me. So as we see him talking, referring to groups of people, like in verse 3 here, I have commanded my sanctified ones. So let's ask ourselves the question, if this is talking about today, or if we can apply this to today, am I on the good team, or am I on the other team, or am I one of the bystanders that just gets squished in the middle of all this tumult? So I think these are some of the questions that we ask ourselves, because I think this is all about how we apply it to today. What are the lessons to help us, either to help us to prepare, or to do the right things, or maybe if nothing else, excuse me, maybe if nothing else, it might help us to have perspective, so that as we look around, excuse me, I don't have the you-know-what virus. I just have my lingering cough thing. Sorry. Anyways, perspective. Let's start with that. I have commanded my sanctified ones. I have also called my mighty ones, for mine anger is not upon them that rejoice in my highness. It's a weird way to say it, but so if we rejoice in the Lord's highness, his anger is not upon us. Okay, good. Let's rejoice. The noise of the multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts mustereth, too early in the morning for this tongue twister, the hosts of the battle. So it's interesting. We've talked about how when we read about mountains, might he be talking about temples? The temple of Jerusalem. Jerusalem itself was on the top of, that was the Mount of the Lord. They'll also call it the Mount of the Daughters of Zion. But in our day today, where we have many temples, we can think, and just as we read about mountains, we can always ask ourselves, could that just apply to temples in general? It was interesting, by the way, when you research what other non-LDS scholars have to say about these, they work very hard to try and fit everything that Isaiah is saying to the actual history. And they give up at some point. They say, I don't even know what this applies to. There's only very minimal acceptance that this could be just future prophecy. Not none, but not as much as you would wish. Okay, verse 5. They come from a far country, from the end of heaven, which apparently just means beyond their knowledge. Like they know the country they're in, they know maybe the next few countries around there, but after that, I don't know. That's the end of heaven. Yea, the Lord and the weapons, which could also be interpreted as the preparations. So the Lord and the weapons, or the Lord and the preparations of his indignation to destroy the whole land. Howl ye, for the day of the Lord is at hand. It shall come as a destruction from the Almighty. Therefore shall all hands be faint, and every man's heart shall melt. And they shall be afraid. Pangs and sorrows shall take hold of them, and they shall be amazed one at another. Their faces shall be as flames. An additional translation there is with fear. So again, it's not terribly mysterious. I think he's just describing a day where, literally all hell's breaking loose, and people are just like, blah, they just don't even know what to make of it. Behold, the day of the Lord cometh, cruel, also translated as terrible, both the wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it. For the stars of heaven and the constellations, this was interesting, it's not so much a translation, but when they refer to constellations frequently, they specifically meant Orion. Don't know why. I like him. I can find him. For the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. This is very similar to what happened at the crucifixion of the Savior. And I will punish the world for evil, and the wicked for their iniquity, and I will cause the arrogancy of the proud to cease, and will lay down the haughtiness of the terrible. I will make a man more precious than fine gold, even a man than the golden wedge of Ophir. So I think what they're saying there is, it sounds like there will be a general population decline, so that there won't be like, there's so many humans, what are we going to do? in this case, it'll be more a matter of scarcity. So it's hard to know if that's exactly what. One interesting note was the golden wedge of Ophir was more preferably translated as simply the pure gold of Ophir. So just pure gold, and the idea there that a man will be precious. He'll be more precious than fine gold. That's really all he's saying. There's no. I was thinking, oh, hey, I wonder what the golden wedge of Ophir is. That must be something kind of cool. Nah, there isn't. It's just kind of a saying. Pure gold. Therefore, I will shake the heavens, and the earth shall remove out of her place in the wrath of the Lord of hosts, and in the day of his fierce anger. And it shall be as the chaste roe, which is also translated as a gazelle, and as a sheep that no man taketh up, or that hath no shepherd. And they shall every man turn to his own people, and flee everyone into his own land. It is interesting when you think of today how intermingled everybody is. A very high percentage of people don't live they don't live in their homelands. Sorry. They live elsewhere. And so maybe as things progress, people will say, I'm going home. Everyone that is proud shall be thrust through. Yea, and everyone that is joined to the wicked shall fall by the sword. Their children also shall be dashed to pieces before their eyes. Their houses shall be spoiled, and their wives ravished. So in here, this is where some of the outside scholars were talking about the fall of Babylon, and that this was very typical in those days, that when a destroying army would come through, they would kill everyone, women, children, after ravishing and all that stuff. This picture here on the left is all that's left of Babylon today. Behold, I will stir up the Medes against them, which shall not regard silver and gold, nor shall they delight in it, meaning they can't be bought. The Medes who came through and destroyed, they just came through and destroyed. They didn't care. They weren't there to get treasure so much as to come through and destroy. Their bows shall also dash the young men to pieces, and they shall have no pity on the fruit of the womb. Their eyes shall not spare children. And Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees' excellency, shall be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah, which is to say, utter destruction, like you see in that picture there. It shall never be, it shall never be inhabited, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. Neither shall the Arabian pitch tent there, neither shall the shepherds make their folds there. And that has been true. All of the nomadic people since then have treated that area as cursed, and so they won't go there. Just odd creatures are there, and that's all. But wild beasts of the desert shall lie there, and their houses shall be full of doleful creatures, and owls shall dwell there, and satyrs, translated as goats, shall dance there. And the wild beasts of the islands, which they're guessing. Now, this isn't quite so much of a translation as it is, what did they mean? And it's interesting that there's, on all these weird animal things, they're making educated guesses, but there's not as much certainty as you would expect. The wild beasts of the islands, or jackals, shall cry in their desolate houses, and dragons, or serpents, in their pleasant places, and her time is near to come. So Babylon was destroyed, they estimate, within 180 years of when this prophecy was given. So even though it says her time is near to come, when you think of how long these ancient cities would last, 180 years is pretty near. That's a blink of an eye for a place like this. And her day shall not be prolonged, for I will destroy her speedily. Yea, for I will be merciful unto my people, but the wicked shall perish. For the Lord will have mercy on Jacob, and will yet choose Israel, and set them in their own land, and the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. So I think it's fairly clear, and when they talk about the strangers, they just mean non-Israelites, non-Jews. And the people shall take them, and bring them to their place, yea, from far unto the ends of the earth, and they shall return to their lands of promise, and the house of Israel shall possess them. And the land of the Lord shall be for servants and handmaids, and they shall take them captives unto whom they were captives, and they shall rule over their oppressors. So there will be a flipping of, who was the oppressor will now be the captive. This is one of those verses where the scholars are saying, I have no idea. This has never happened, so I don't know. And it shall come to pass in the day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow and from thy fear, and from the hard bondage wherein thou wast made to serve. And it shall come to pass in that day that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon, and say, How hath the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased. The Lord hath broken the staff of the wicked, the scepters of the rulers. He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he that ruled the nations in anger, is persecuted, and none hindereth. So again, he's talking about a real role reversal here. The whole earth is at rest and is quiet. They break forth into singing. Yea, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and also the cedars of Lebanon, saying, Since thou art laid down, no feller is come up against us. So even the trees are happy. Hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming, and it stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It hath raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. It's interesting, verse 9, again, scholars don't really know what to make of this. If you have an understanding of the work in the spirit world and what Christ did when he died and before he was resurrected, going into the spirit world, if you understand that, then verse 9 makes a lot of sense. And when they say hell, they mean the spirit world, the just and the unjust, and that it wasn't a bad thing, it was a good thing. And they shall speak and say unto thee, Art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us? So now we're talking to the king of Babylon again. Thy pomp is brought down to the grave. The noise of thy vials is not heard. The worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? Art thou cut down to the ground, which did weaken the nations? So again, he's kind of drifting in between referring to the king of Babylon and referring to Lucifer now sort of interchangeably, because their fate is similar, just on perhaps different scales. For thou hast said in thy heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. Now, I did some reading on the mount of the congregation. That sounds cool. Where's that? And near as anyone can figure, they're guessing that it is the mount of the Lord, which is essentially the Temple Mount. Although there's not a huge consensus there. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee, and shall consider thee, and shall say, Is this the man that made the earth to tremble, and did shake the kingdoms, and made the world as a wilderness, and destroyed the cities thereof, and opened not the house of his prisoners? All the kings of the nations, yea, all of them, lie in glory, every one of them in his own house, or sepulchre. So he's saying, all the other kings, they all have their fine sepulchres, but thou art cast out of thy grave like an abominable branch, and the remnant of those that are slain thrust through the sword, that go down to the stones of the pit, as a carcass trodden under feet. So here again, they're assuming, they believe that the king of Babylon was indeed not afforded, the last king, when it fell, he was not given, he was not put to rest in any sort of a nice sepulcher. He was just left laying where he was slain. Thou shalt not be joined with them in burial, because thou hast destroyed thy land and slain thy people. The seed of evildoers shall never be renowned. Prepare slaughter for his children, for the iniquities of their fathers, that they do not rise, nor possess the land, nor fill the face of the world with cities. This is another comment about how typically when a city is conquered like that, the men are the first ones to die because they're the ones battling, but ultimately then the women and the children are finally the last ones to die. For I will rise up against them, saith the Lord of hosts, and cut off from Babylon the name and the remnant and son and nephew, saith the Lord. I will also make it a possession for the bittern, which is a type of owl, and pools of water, or swamp, is a translation there. And I will sweep it with the besom, which is a broom, of destruction, saith the Lord of hosts. The Lord of hosts hath sworn, saying, Surely as I have thought, so shall it come to pass, and as I have purposed, so shall it stand, that I will bring the Assyrian in my land, and upon my mountains tread him underfoot, and then shall his yoke depart from off them, and his burden depart from off their shoulders. So, he's saying, I'm going to bring them in, but then I'm going to squash them, the Assyrians. This is the purpose that is purposed upon the whole earth, and this is the hand that is stretched out upon all nations. For the Lord of hosts hath purposed, and who shall disannul? And his hand is stretched out, and who shall turn it back? So if you think about it, as it was with the Assyrians, where they came into the land of Israel and Judah and almost completely destroyed, but then were destroyed. And in a sense, that's what's happening on a global scale, is that the world, boy, who's in charge, right? The world is, they're kind of owning the most things. So the Lord is allowing this to happen, and then they're going to get crushed where they are. In the year that King Ahaz died, was this burden, which was 710 BC. Rejoice not thou, whole Palestina, which I didn't realize, but the translation there is Philistines. Because the rod of him that smote thee is broken, for out of the serpent's root shall come forth a cockatrice, which again is not a real thing. It's a legendary creature. And his fruit shall be a fiery flying serpent. The firstborn of the poor shall feed, and the needy shall lie down in safety. And I will kill thy root with famine, and he shall slay thy remnant. So the Philistines aren't going to have a happy ending. Howl, O gate. Cry, O city. Thou whole Palestina art dissolved. For there shall come from the north a smoke, and none shall be alone in his appointed times. What shall then answer the messengers of the nations? That the Lord hath founded Zion, and the poor of his people shall trust in it. And this is where Nephi ends, his sharing of Isaiah. And so, it's like, whoa, that's howl and cry and all that, and the end. So it's kind of an interesting, abrupt ending. But I think maybe what, the idea here is that things are just going to be kind of going nuts, right? And, as you're looking around, everything is in a state of commotion, howling and crying and things of that nature. What shall then answer the messengers of the nations, or the people who are asking, what's going on here? How do we answer the people who will ask the questions, what's going on here? That the Lord hath founded Zion, and the poor of his people shall trust in it. And I think that is the message of messages of all this, is that when everything is going nuts around us, we need to be faithful, and we need to trust in the Lord that he has founded Zion, and that this is all part of his plan. We need to do the best we can to be the faithful ones, to be the ones who rejoice in the Lord, right, as it said earlier on, and be faithful and be patient and be helpful. And I think things will work out well for us. So that's the end of the Isaiah chapters. There you go. You did it. And so much to think about. And I hope we're able to get through, and by throwing a little bit of light on some of these odd sayings, hopefully that helped to kind of give you some momentum and some comfort in, oh, okay, this isn't completely crazy talk. I see sort of what's going on here. So there you go. So coming up next, Nephi he's going to talk a little bit about what we've read, and he's going to then share some of his own prophecies about Christ's life and what comes next. These next few chapters of Nephi are awesome. There's some super powerful, awesome, heavy-duty doctrine coming our way. So it'll be fun, and I'll see you then.